Benjamin from Beat Imagine Music Studio in Haverhill, Massachusetts, just one town away from Atkinson, New Hampshire, where the great Brad Delp used to live. I used to work at a video store maybe back in 1993, and he came in to rent videos sometimes, and first day he came in and he came up to the counter, and I said, "What's your last name, sir?" And the woman working with me said, "Excuse this kid for not knowing who you are." I didn't realize it was Brad Delp, the singer for Boston, and over the next year he would come in, and such a kind man. He would always ask me how my band was doing, which I thought was so cool for such a famous person to be seeing how I was doing and to care about me. So I want to talk about this song called Peace of Mind by Boston. Now, I want to approach this lesson a little bit differently than some other YouTube videos you may find. So often when young people learn the guitar, you begin by learning just what fret number you're playing. So this note, people think of it as the 6th fret of the 4th string, but really it's much better when you get to know the guitar in such a way that you understand the letters. So really, to me, this is G sharp, and now I can communicate with other musicians far more easily. So if you want to learn the inner workings of how this song really works, this is the video for you. What I figure we would start with is talking about how this song is in the key of E major, and we'll get to know the E major scale. Well, if you know your E string, and we'll talk about all the notes from the open tone to the 12th fret, and what letters they are. We have E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. But I wanted to teach you about the E major scale, which is a little bit different. It has the notes F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. Now I'm going to get to this bottom part in a few moments, but you can see that's the scale there. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. So it would be played like this: E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. I want to describe the song where we talk about the real tones, and we're going to see that we're mostly going to use just those notes. The only exceptions is we'll sometimes play a D note, which we consider to be the flat 7. We'll sometimes also play a G note, which we consider it to be the flat 3. In this chord progression, we're playing the 6 chord, C sharp minor, to the 4 chord, A, to the 1, E, to the 5, B. So that progression is in E major, and it's the 6, 4, 1, 5. Now, what are the notes in those chords? Well, let's check this quick little chart out that I drew. And these aren't quite the notes yet, though. These are just the triads you learned when you studied the C major key. You learned about C, E, G, A, C, E, E, G, B, B, D, F, and hopefully you also learned what type of chords they are. We need to change these. These letters and these triads are not quite correct unless they have the sharps from the parent scale. So we can just fill all those missing sharps in, but you can also think about the steps from each tone to each tone to really understand what's going on. So with C, now this isn't right, we need to have C sharp and G sharp, and now C sharp to E is a whole and a half step, which makes it minor, and E to G sharp is 2 whole steps. Now that's a minor chord. A, C, E, originally that's minor, but we need A major, so we raise the middle tone to be C sharp. Now A to C sharp is 2 whole steps, and C sharp to E is a whole and a half. Now this is major, fits the key. Same with this chord, we have to sharp that tone in the middle. And with B, boy, B, D, F, I know it as diminished, which is a flatted 3rd and a flatted 5th. I'm going to have to sharp both of those tones to make it major. So these are the triads we're going to be working with and in the chords. And what I really want to teach you now is about how that opening melody leans on notes from tones in each chord at each moment. When this chord is being played, these 3 tones are called the chord tones. And those are the notes you'll hear that the melody player leans on. Any of the notes that are not one of these 3 are called passing tones. But then when this chord gets played, these become the chord tones. So let's look at this melody. This is what I find to be so interesting, and I think is something you could use to help you write your own great music. So he's playing that C sharp chord to begin, and the melody player plays notes from the E major scale begins on G sharp. We just said that was in a C sharp minor triad. E and C sharp. Plays all three tones from the triad. Now, he's leaning on this C sharp note as the chord player plays a C sharp minor chord. But then the chord player goes to an A chord. The melody player keeps playing that C sharp because we know that an A chord is A, C sharp, E, so it still makes sense. Walks up to this E note, and the chord player is playing an E chord, so that makes sense, right? And then the chord player plays a B chord made up of B, D sharp, F sharp, and the melody player plays F sharp, D sharp, so he's leaning on tones from that chord. Now, if you recall, the first time we went from C sharp minor to A and then to E. Well, this time, same chords, but the melody player is going, walks up to this G sharp note. And G sharp is part of the E chord. Then comes over to this F sharp, which is part of the B chord. So that's the thing that I find to be so interesting in the melody and how it connects with each different chord at each different moment. Now let's talk about the solo a little bit. Well, the two solos, because there's two gentlemen trading solos. So the chords that are played underneath the solo are kind of unusual to the key so far, because the first chord they play is a D chord. To A, then to E. Now, a D chord is not in the key of E major, so this is what we call a key of the moment. Why play a D chord? Well, if you examine the key of E major, remember we had 4 sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, as accidentals. Then besides that we had our regular letters of B, E, A. Well, the key of A major has just 3 sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and it has a D natural, so it's really a neighboring key. When we play D, A, E, we're playing in the key of A really for the moment. We're playing the 4 chord to the 1 to the 5. E is now the 5 chord in the key of A. So that's a really cool exception to the key that they've been in the whole time. The first guy plays this. Now what is that? He's playing the E major pentatonic scale, but then reaches over and plays this D note, which is unusual because in the E major scale we should have D sharp, but this is that flat 7, bends it a whole step till it becomes E. Want to be careful not to overbend it. So we talked about how in the introduction the melodies that the lead player played connected with each chord and leaned on chord tones. Now this lick is actually an exception to that because when the band plays the D chord, that lead guitar player is playing that E note, which is really the second note in the scale. It's not a chord tone. So it sounds really wild and cool, and it shows you that you don't always have to lean on chord tones. Other notes of the scale, being passing tones that are not part of that chord, can be exciting and create tension, and that's what happens at this moment. It makes it sound really cool. When you're playing along with the track, you can really keep yourself in good tune by using your ear to hear that whole step bend. Pretty much continuing with the E major scale except for a flat 7, which is considered E mixolydian. The other player comes in with, well, that's really simple and cool. He's playing the E major scale right here. Now here is where that second player grabs a G note, bends it a whole step to an A, so he's using that flatted third. He's giving us a bluesy sound. Everything else is pretty much right in that E major scale. The first player comes in with, now that is very similar to what the second player just played, using the G note, bent to A, but he ends his solo with that cool country lick, where this is the E, the root. I'm not going to tell you what fret. It's an E note in the second string. And then here's the second note of the scale, F sharp. You bend it a whole step till it sounds like G sharp. And when you get to that peak and you end up at that third tone, which is G sharp, you play this pinky B, which is the 5th. It's kind of like an outline of an E major chord. Great country lick. Then that second guitar player plays his last part, which is actually something different that we haven't mentioned yet at all. It's the chromatic scale. The band is playing an A chord. He starts at an F sharp, which is the 6th note of the scale. 6, flat 7, 7, root. Just walks his way up with a chromatic scale. And again, a chromatic scale is a scale that uses just half steps. But by the time he gets into that, he's doing E major pentatonic again. Part is really fun. He's doing that same country lick we saw before, but now he's in B. Here's his B. There's a C sharp, the 2nd note. He's going to bend it till it sounds like D sharp. Then play the pinky, not the 5th note, but the root at the top. So that's such a fun lick. Then they play in unison. Just pretty much an E major scale type of lick that ends on that high B. It's really exciting. Then they get into their dual harmonies. Now the dual harmonies are all just in the E major scale. The main player plays. You got to make sure you bend really well to that C sharp, which is part of the A chord. The low melody player plays. Now that's a little bit more of a tricky bend because you're bending a G sharp just a half step. You notice I always use that vibrato because it really kind of puts you in tune. So, all the rest of the melodies, you can go back and pause the video to learn them. I hope you enjoyed the way that I'm teaching you to play this piece by really knowing the notes of the scale, which is the E major scale, and some of the scales that are altered variations of E major, like E mixolydian with the flat 7, using that flat 3 in the blues type of scale, and also using the chromatic little melody we had. Fantastic stuff. I hope you really enjoyed playing this song called Peace of Mind. Listen to the words. I think they'll make you have a happy, fantastic day and put you in a good mood, and hope you enjoy music all week long. Be well.